Guys, we've got major news. This is absolutely breaking, absolutely critical as it relates to the future of college football. Tommy Tuberville is leading the latest congressional push for NIL regulation. The former football coach and Alabama senator is drafting a bill with West Virginia Democrat Joe Manchin aimed at taming the chaotic NIL landscape. And you can see it says in the article, he's quoted as saying, "I've talked to all of my coaching buddies. They've never seen anything like it. When you don't have guidelines and directions, no matter what you are doing, you are lost. They are all lost right now." Shocker. Absolute shocker. So, guys, we'll see if any sort of legislation that can relegate this ridiculous NIL stuff gets passed. Of course, we can all see where this is going, right? If something gets passed to where we get some actual rules, all of these teams that have been blatantly cheating to get recruits, 5-star recruits, high 4-star recruits, they will, of course, completely get away with it. And we've had the 2022 recruiting cycle completely ruined by blatant NIL booster cheating. And now we're having the 2023 cycle ruined. And at this point, a lot of us are just like, all right, whatever. Teams are cheating left and right. Let's get something in place so this doesn't ruin the 2024 cycle, because it's going on 2 cycles now that are being absolutely ruined by different programs playing by a different set of rules. And you've got some of these programs saying nobody's policing it, we're just going to cheat, whatever. And then other programs saying, no, it's not right, and we don't want our locker room to be infested with a bunch of 17-year-old kids that are getting 7-figure deals. So it is a complete mess. We'll see if they're able to do something, but unfortunately, obviously we hope they're able to relegate it, do something, because right now, following recruiting is demoralizing, especially if you're a fan of a team that is not known to, even if your team is weaponized. Well, I guess if you're a Texas A&M fan, you're happy. But other than that, even if you are weaponizing NIL, for following recruiting, like getting a player just because you paid him, $3 million, is there really any fun in that? I don't know. But that is the situation on NIL. And then we do have a few different mock scenarios. This is the Pac-12 and the Big 12 in a potential combination. You can see this situation with Washington, Stanford, not Oregon. So I'm guessing they're saying Oregon goes to the Big 10 in this scenario. Arizona State, and then Utah and Colorado as well joining the Big 12 in that scenario. I always like looking at these graphs. Of course, the situation with the Pac-12, they're still in negotiations right now. The biggest dominoes within the Pac-12, Washington and Oregon. And this would kind of be a far out there scenario with Washington and Oregon getting split up. Washington heading to the Big 12, Oregon in this scenario, I'm guessing going to the Big 10 if that were to play out. And then this is potentially the new Big 10 with Washington, Oregon, California, and Stanford going to the Big 10, possibly 2025 or 2026. And then you've actually got Notre Dame in this situation staying as an independent. So this league would be expanded to a full-blown 20-team conference, and it would basically be a combination of the Big 10 and the Pac-12. I'm sure Washington, Oregon, Stanford, and California would absolutely love this situation. Personally, I think if the Big Ten is expanding to 20 teams and they can't get Notre Dame, they're going to look in the ACC and see if they can't siphon off a few top teams from the ACC. I think Virginia is an amazing fit for the Big Ten in terms of their academics. Personally, we've got this. Who will have more wins this season? Brian Kelly, Marcus Freeman. I think Notre Dame wins 9 games. They have 3 really tough. Actually, I think they have probably 5 decently tough games, but I know they have 3 extremely hard games at Ohio State, at USC, versus Clemson. But other than that, Notre Dame should be very good this year. Brian Kelly, we all know it's a horrible fit. And what did Brian Kelly sign, like a 10-year contract? I don't think he makes it out of year 4. I think I'm being nice to him. It might even be earlier than that. Brian Kelly gets fired from LSU, especially with NIL. I just don't think it's a good fit at all. And it was kind of a godsend. Notre Dame fans now are extremely thankful that Brian Kelly basically abandoned their team. If you guys remember that whole saga, when they still had a chance of making the playoff. I think Notre Dame was like a one-loss team. They had a slight chance. And before they were even out of it, Brian Kelly is headed to LSU, and that whole situation transpired, and everyone got mad because of the whole recruiting thing. So, we'll see what happens there. This is so fascinating here. Teams with a win versus Alabama in the Nick Saban era. So, Saban became the Alabama coach in 2007, I believe, and that's when UL Monroe beat them. But it's crazy. You've got Auburn. They face them every year. They face LSU every year. And only 2 teams with more than 3 wins against Nick Saban since 2007. The dominance in the SEC is just ridiculous for Alabama. Clemson, Georgia, Ole Miss, and A&M all with 2. And then, of course, UL Monroe, Ohio State. We remember, what was that, the Sugar Bowl game versus Bob Stoops in Oklahoma. And there's a few other teams there as well. Utah, South Carolina. When did South Carolina beat? Probably in like 2007, 2008. That's my guess there. Most Power 5 wins since 2000. Little surprised Oklahoma is number 1. This is including vacated wins. Now, originally, I thought it wasn't including it. But since 2000, Oklahoma number 1, Ohio State number 2. Also surprising, Georgia is number 3. It shows you how bad Alabama was in those early 2000 years. They're number 5 due to those, years before Nick Saban. And then you have Oregon, who's been consistently successful. USC still sitting there at number 6 due to Pete Carroll. LSU, they're kind of hot and cold. They'll have extremely good seasons and then really bad ones. And Texas, due to the 2000s, early 2000s, along with Florida, the Urban Meyer years, I'm guessing, there. Next, we've got Cincinnati. How many games will they win? It'll be so interesting with Cincinnati. I always say Cincinnati, very rarely do you see a team like Cincinnati lose like 9 players to the draft or whatever. I think they had 7 players get drafted. That week 1 at Arkansas, that's tough. Losing all those players. I don't see them winning that. They'll win week 2. They have a game at Miami of Ohio. So they travel to Miami of Ohio. I don't think that's correct. That's probably a home game. Versus Indiana, they could beat Indiana. Even with, a rebuilt team, they could beat Indiana at home. That's right, they have a home and home with Indiana. They beat them last year, and now they face them at home. At Tulsa, the American Conference is not good. Tulsa sucks. South Florida sucks. SMU's not great. UCF, we'll see, but they have a quarterback question. Navy, East Carolina, my God, that is a bad schedule. They could win 8-9 games easily. That is a horrific conference schedule. You know who they miss? They miss Houston. I love Houston this year to be the New Year's 6 representative out of the group of 5. Houston, they should make it, certainly. The American Conference is really weak this year with Dylan Gabriel transferring out and Cincinnati having to rebuild. So this is a very fascinating thing here. This was College Football Brand Rankings. They surveyed 1,000 high school athletes, and I think these kids did a pretty good job. Alabama number 1. This is just based on relevancy. Like, what are the programs, when you think of college football, what are the programs you know? Bama, Ohio State, Georgia. I'm a little surprised Georgia's number 3, I guess because they just won the national title. Oklahoma, Clemson. You know what I'm surprised by? And this tells you older people. Notre Dame at number 12. If you're like a 40-year-old person, one of the top 3 college football teams you're going to name in terms of brands is Notre Dame. The young kids, they don't name Notre Dame. They're not even in the top 10. You've got LSU ahead of them. You've got A&M. You've got Oregon, Miami. All of these younger high school kids. That is shocking. Also, Penn State a little bit low. North Carolina is high, in my opinion. 14 seems pretty high. Ole Miss, that's right. Michigan, that's another one that's shockingly low. I'm surprised Michigan is 16. FSU at 17, they've been bad recently. Tennessee, USC, you would figure would be higher, but they have been bad. I think with Lincoln Riley, once they start making New Year's 6 games, USC will be like top 8 or 7. UCLA, Auburn, Michigan, the Maryland at 24. That's a little surprising. Maryland's inside the top 25. But Michigan and Notre Dame, these were high school recruits. So these are younger kids. Who do you value as the top brands? Very interesting, the contrast, as opposed to someone like me. Well, I guess, I'm younger. It wouldn't be me. It'd be someone older. You ask them the top brands, they're going to say Ohio State, Michigan, Texas, Notre Dame, and you've got Notre Dame and Michigan below LSU, below Miami, below Oregon. So that is surprising there, to be honest with you. This is a Big Ten Conference winner. So this, if you guys don't understand how odds work, Ohio State is by horrible odds, like they're horrible value, minus 220 to win the entire conference. The next closest team is plus 700. So, I wouldn't, honestly, I think Ohio State's a lock to win it. But just based on how bad those odds are, I am not betting on anyone on this board just because Ohio State's odds are so bad. But then it's like, if you're throwing $100 on Michigan, you're just going to lose $100. Michigan is not beating Ohio State this year. And then you've got... And the reason you bet Wisconsin, maybe they make the Big Ten championship and get lucky, but I really don't see it. Wisconsin actually faces Ohio State in the regular season, week 4. The game's in Columbus. It'll probably be either a 3:30 or a 7:30 game. Penn State plus 1,500. In the East, I don't see it. Iowa probably has the best value, plus 2,000, but there's no way. Whoever wins the West is probably going to have to face Ohio State. To me, all these odds are bad. I think Ohio State's a lock to win it. Maybe an injury happens. That would be the only way. I don't see them winning it, in my opinion. And then we've got this. Pick one. Cade McNamara versus J.J. McCarthy. You think if you're a Michigan fan, you would want J.J. McCarthy, the 5-star. He got a little playing time last year. They actually threw him in to the playoff game towards the back end of it. So you would think, McCarthy's a game manager. McNamara is a game manager. McCarthy, he's shown mobility with his legs. You have 3 extremely easy non-conference games. Get McCarthy significant reps. Get him ready. And then Michigan does have a week 4 game at Iowa that I expect to be a big noon game for Michigan. So that's their first tough one. I think they should go with McCarthy. And if they do roll with McNamara, that's an indictment on McCarthy not being ready, because McNamara is a game manager. You could say, they went to the playoff with him, whatever. That's Aiden Hutchinson. That's Ajabo. That's that defense. And it's a combination of Ohio State not being able to stop the run with Haskins with the 4 or 5 rushing touchdowns, whatever it was. And once again, guys, we've got this NIL regulation. And once again, guys, we've got the major thing, the NIL situation with Congress. Maybe they can do something, but I think if they even do something, there's going to be no punishment for all these teams that blatantly cheat. And now, of course, the issue is all these teams that are cheating, their rosters are getting ridiculously talented. And they're getting talented because they're cheating. So there's just going to be no punishment. But I think at this point, we just don't want another recruiting cycle to be ruined by NIL, because when half the teams are operating and recruiting under one set of rules and the other half are operating under another set of rules, it trying to follow recruiting is becoming impossible. Because no matter how well you recruit someone, you might not even be in it for them because you're not willing to do something that another school would be willing to do, like give them an illegal NIL deal through one of your collectives before the kid even commits to your school or is even on campus. You're giving these deals because the kid's a 5-star. That's why they're getting money. That's not how NIL is supposed to work. You're not supposed to use your recruiting status, the fact that you're a 5-star, as a reason to get $7 million. When you get on campus, that's when you're able to do it. It's not supposed to be something that's done during the recruitment. And again, guys, these teams are blatantly cheating. They're getting away with it. It's sad. At this point, we just want a clean 2024 cycle. I don't know if we're going to get it. We'll see. But guys, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.